Hello, hello, everybody. My name is Like Water, Kristen. Welcome to today's in session, all about royalties and NFTs. Today, we're going to share ways to collect your song royalties and different avenues that creatives are using to maximize income, including, you know it, NFTs. So today, I am joined by Kristen McCann and Jen Mandia. Welcome, you guys. How y'all feeling today?
Feeling real good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, same here. Happy
Amazing.
to be here.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's start with you, Jen. Can you share with everyone your preferred gender pronouns and a little bit about who you are?
Absolutely. I'm Jen Mandia. Thank you so much for having me. I am an LA-based singer-songwriter, preferred gender pronouns, she, her. I perform under the artist name Esabalu, and I also am a contract vocalist, so I do some commercial work and light TV work as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, be sure to check her out, y'all. All right, Kristen, can you also do the same? Share with us your preferred gender pronouns and a bit about who you are?
Of course, I'm Kristen McCann. My preferred gender pronouns are she, her. I'm LA based, kind of a newbie. I was in New York for 10 years, but now I'm on the West Coast. I've worked on the publishing side, the label side, and currently I work at a movie trailer shop. Basically, we're a marketing agency that cuts movie trailers. So I work in the music department there.
Awesome. Love it. Yes, we will share links with you guys as to how to connect with them both. So don't worry, we will definitely get into that because I know that you guys are already excited to connect with them. So I'm excited about this panel. So I can't wait to jump into the mix. So we'll be covering several topics related to royalties and NFTs for the first 45 minutes of our chat, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So as I roll into our housekeeping, we just want everybody to remember that this is a supportive and uplifting space. So please keep the dialogue in the chat respectful as we get into this discussion. And also feel free to use the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I see that a lot of you have done that already. But as you do that, make sure to change that bottom bar to everyone so that we are all a part of the conversation. You can also let us know what you're vibing out to, what you're connecting with as we're discussing. And if you have questions, go ahead and funnel that into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We don't want it to get lost in the sauce of the chat. So yeah, if you filled it into the Q&A section, we'll get to that at the end, that last 15 minutes of the webinar. You're also going to get a survey at the end to let us know any other topics that you want us to cover in session and how you felt about this one. So stay tuned for all of that. All right, I am done with the spiel, done with the housekeeping items, and into the discussion. So, first question, feel free to jump in. What are royalties in your area of the business?
Okay.
Gotta love people who give grace. Yes, either of you.
Okay, I'll get it started. So royalties are basically payments that you get for the use and reproduction of your music. It can range from it being played on the radio, it being played in a restaurant, it being featured in a movie trailer. But basically, every time your work is used, just how you collect those payments and from all the different avenues.
Yeah, second everything that Kristen said. And for me specifically, I've seen that in the form of sync. So the overwhelming majority of my royalties have come from like ad campaigns and commercials for things like Google or Samsung or LinkedIn. And so the other form that I receive royalties in is also TV performances, if it's like background vocals, which some people might consider residuals, but it's still coming. I know we'll dive into it a little bit later from SAG-AFTRA. So those people consider like residuals, but it's another form of royalties for performances.
Awesome. Love that. Yes, can't wait to dive into all of that. So, Jen, what have you seen that you need to do to ensure that you're collecting all of your royalties?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in my experience, I'm usually signing some sort of legally binding contract. And so you are insured a certain amount based on the terms of your contract. And I've received royalties both in and out of unions. Within the unions, there's just more laws around how you get your royalties. There's just people are so heavily fined once you're inside of a union if they don't pay out those royalties. So that's been my experience. But I also think it's good to do things like register and copyright your songs to make sure that you are getting your just due. I think those things come, it's just making sure that you're getting all of that background taken care of when you're releasing music, if you're collaborating with other people. But in general, I think it's just good to have a thorough read through and have some kind of entertainment lawyer looking over your contracts to make sure that you not only are you getting what you said you would get in your contract, but that the contract that you signed is what you wanted before you even get into any of that.
Do you know and understand what you're about to sign, what you're signing up for sure. And Kristen, how about you on your side of the business? What do artists need to do to ensure they're collecting all the royalties?
There are a couple things. I think the biggest one is probably being signed up with a PRO, like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, or if you're international, I know PRS is one, but they basically keep track of all your performance royalties and pay you out usually on like a semi-annual basis. There's also, you can have a publishing administrator, someone who just registers your songs and make sure you're collecting everything, and the traditional publisher, some of the larger ones like Warner Chappell and Sony, like they'll do that for you as well, but they may take a percentage of it and offer like creative services and different avenues to kind of boost your portfolio that way. What else? I think those are the main ones. And if you also have a distributor, DistroKid, TuneCore, like they'll also make sure that you're getting all your royalties.
Awesome. Yes, all those buzz companies. Gotta love it. Sometimes you gotta, figure out where you want to put your energy. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Awesome. So what do PROs like BMI, ASCAP, what do those things do for the artist specifically? We don't have to like get too deep into like each individual, like which one is better, but as a whole, what do PROs do for artists?
Um, I think that, the which one is better conversation is tough because they both do their jobs well and they also do different things well. Like, I think that BMI is really good for like songwriters. I worked at Warner Chappell and we would partner with like BMI and ASCAP to do like songwriting camps and like pair them with our producers and just kind of get them more opportunities. And I know ASCAP kind of offers more perks for like the touring artists. Like you might get discounts on like flights and hotels. So it really kind of depends on you. And then CSAC is another sub, but CSAC is a little different because it's invitation only, whereas like BMI and ASCAP, like anyone can sign up. But they all definitely, are in your corner to help you, basically collect all your points.
Love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah. I agree with all of that. And I'm CSAC. And so that's been helpful to me just because since it is invitation only, I've had a little bit more face time with my rep over the past 7 years. And so because I've made the majority of my royalties through music that may not be my own work, that may be vocal contracting through the union, my CSAC rep has helped me just be a mentor for things like connecting me with other women in the entertainment industry, or for instance, like if I need somebody to review a contract, hey, who's the best person for this? Or what have you seen in your experience? Just because she is dealing with so many different types of artists. Shout out to Diana at CSAC. And just like being a mentor for as a woman in the industry, right? So somebody that I can go to and say, hey, is this fair? Is this the correct avenue for this? Has been my experience. And then those are, like you said, resources for getting connected to events like Women in Music events. And I've gone to BMI and ASCAP events. So those things are generally pretty open to the public. And I think it's just important that you're signed up for a PRO, period, just because like we mentioned before, those things can help you once you do land a sync deal or once you are getting lots of streams, they're collecting on your behalf. And those checks just show up because you've registered your publishing company, you've registered, they know your routing number, like everything's set up and things are just showing up to your door. Whereas you're kind of on your own. If you're not with any kind of PRO, you're on your own. And like the music industry is not checking for you to make sure you get your money. So
You're not getting that money.
not getting that money. And so there's a whole organizations that are made just so that people can get the money that they're due from years and years past because they were never signed up for a PRO. So that tells you how those things can get miscalculated. So I think there's lots of benefits to being signed up with a PRO, that can span from like the beginning of your artist journey to, you know, as a CSEC has Adele, you know what I mean? Like, or at one point had Adele, you know what I'm saying? So like, you know, you're not necessarily getting a ton of one-on-one attention if you're a new artist, but you can usually, like, I can put 30 minutes on my rep's calendar and just be like, I need just a little bit of your time to chat through, you know, what's going on with me right now, what's your advice? And like, I try and use that sparingly because they do have some large artists on there under them. But I think it's just important that you know that you have somebody in your corner, maybe before you're signed to like a label, for instance.
That is incredible. If anybody, listen, send some invitations out to folks if you if you got them to send. That sounds like some incredible resources, like right at your fingertips, like you were saying. And also women in the industry, like Women's History Month, you know, shout out, and grateful to have you incredible women doing your thing on this panel today. So yeah, how do PROs differ from entities like SAG-AFTRA?
So SAG-AFTRA is a union, so they're kind of there to like protect you essentially. Like where PROs, they're there, like you can register through your PRO. I think it's just like doing your due diligence. Whereas the union, in my experience, so I did gigs both before and after being a part of the union. And so the majority of my gigs pre-union were television performance. And I had to do like several years of work before they were like, they invited me. So I think you can apply, but I think I had done a certain amount of work and they were like, okay, you've been invited to the union. And I think that that's just a great resource for literally protecting the amount of hours that somebody might make you work, making sure that you're getting paid the correct amount for what you're doing. So if there's like 2 or fewer background vocalists, you're getting paid a much higher rate than if there's 3 or more. So any like choir gig, your rate goes way down. And the rule book is humongous, but it's all there. So if at any point you're not getting what you're owed, you can point to those rules. It's like any other union where it's just there, like those rules were made to protect you. Another thing with SAG-AFTRA specifically is you can, if you're making a certain amount of money, you can get insurance through them. So once you transition over to making music full time, that's a great resource because then you're saying, okay, well then I know that okay, I quit this job so I can still have health insurance. The only thing I'll say for that is that if you aren't making a certain amount, then you won't be eligible for health insurance. So you just have to be careful and make sure that you have crossed that threshold that will consistently be making enough money, because you don't want to not work for a quarter or for a season and not have, you know, dental.
For sure.
But I think like, you know, you can make that decision once again, talk to your mentors, talk to folks that have maybe had some experience and say like, hey, do you think it's time for me to transition over to union insurance? And then SAGAFTRA.org has all of those resources there, both before and after you join, for any questions. And then once again, you can always pick up the phone and say, hey, I worked this job. I didn't get a break after 8 hours. What are the rules? I'll explain everything to you. You know what I mean? So I think just like something to protect people who are like in a very vulnerable industry. So they're kind of like PROs and unions are just like totally separate things. I think that both can be beneficial to an artist.
Awesome. Yeah. And I don't even think before, you know, chatting with you that I even knew unions existed for artists, like, or that was something that was even needed. So, you know, any artists out there that, you know, are on this grind, for sure, you know, just definitely look into those things. It's always great to have somebody, you know, in your corner, helping to protect you while you're out here, you know, sharing your craft with the world.
Yeah, and I'll just
Oh yeah,
add
go ahead.
that, I know that SAG-AFTRA is usually looked at as an actors union, but if there are vocals on television, you are qualified for SAG-AFTRA unless you signed a contract that says otherwise. So that's why it kind of falls under that thing. And so there are plenty of like recording artists and things like that under SAG-AFTRA. So just to explain a little bit further.
Grateful for that clarity. Oh, Jessica, I see your comment in the chat. Yes, the video will be available up on the website, up on YouTube, after the webinar, not right after, like, you know, next week sometime. And you'll also get an email to let you know when it's ready. So if you got to jump off, you know, we understand, but it will be available for sure. All right. So the next question we have is in a similar vein, but almost the opposite. Like, why would someone not want to be a part of, you know, a union like SAG-AFTRA or a PRO like BMI and ASCAP?
you want to chat through PROs, Kristen?
Sure. I don't, like honestly, I don't really see there being a reason not to be a part of a PRO. I think that, they can just be such a great resource. And even if you maybe have it in your mind that you only want your music to live one place, like it can travel and it can like take on a whole life of its own. It can end up on a TV show and a movie trailer. And I think it's important to have, someone like watching out for your interests and like tracking those things. So, while a whole publishing deal might not be necessary, I do think that it's important for any songwriter, producer, music maker to be a part of a PRO.
For sure. Yeah. And only thing I can think of for PROs, I started with CSAC and I stayed with them because I love them. But the only thing I would think is if it was difficult to get out, which I have not heard of people having difficulty switching over. So that's the only thing I could think of there. For the unions, I would just say that there are some gigs that are non-union gigs and you can't get them if you're SAG because they don't want to pay you because the rates are pretty fair. So that's the only thing that I took into consideration before actually signing up was that, I might lose certain gigs where people are like, we can't afford that, just contractually how much we'll end up having to dish out because you're in the union, right? And so it might go to somebody that just like isn't union but can sing it just as well, and that's like, as opposed to losing a gig based on merit, you're losing it because like your rate is too high. So that's the only thing I could think of, but I think that I would overwhelmingly be in favor of joining the union.
Awesome. And I know you were talking about like the unions and invitations and all of those things. Are there any fees that are tied to unions or fees that are tied to PROs, either like before or like after some sort of percentage breakdown or anything?
PROs are all free, right, to join?
Yeah, as far
Um,
as I know.
Kind of. It depends. Like I know BMI is free if you're like a singular like songwriting entity, but there are fees if you're registering as a publishing entity. And I think ASCAP might have like a $50 fee, but like everything I didn't see anything above $200.
Yeah.
And most things, if you're just a singular person, is free or low cost.
Yeah. CSAC's free to join. And like you said, if it's $50, it's definitely way worth your time. Like you're gonna make that just like, you trust me, I'd pay it. But and then the union is quite expensive. So that was another decision I had to make at one point, because you might be invited to join the union when you don't have $3,000 to pay. And so I think like that's a decision that you make once again. Am I making enough for this to be worth it? Will I make this much this year to make that up, right? And sometimes you don't know. What I will say is that they do have payment plans, so they will split it up for you throughout the year. There are certain perks that aren't available to you until after you have fully paid off your dues. And then the quarterly dues are pretty low. And then in terms of taxes, you're asked to input how much you made. So it's good to keep track of that. You'll usually get some kind of 1099 or something like that, but it's good to keep track of that on your own because your dues will change depending on how much you make every year. So it's something to keep track of. But I think that if you can muster, or if you can collect those coins up, I think it is worth it. Because once again, you're then protected under union rules. And I think that ends up being worth it. I will say for certain things like TV performances, they pay you SAG-AFTRA regardless. They pay you through the union, and that those rates shouldn't change. It's just, once again, you're protected under certain rules if you are within the union.
Awesome. And I think, just like everything in this conversation, please do your own research, figure out what aligns with you, your goals, who you are, what you desire, so that you can make the right choice for you. These incredible folks are making choices based on them and their research. So definitely dive in and get some additional information and do what's right for you. So we're going to jump over to NFTs after this next question. What advice would you give to artists that are looking to jump into, receiving royalties and being protected like through these entities, the PROs and also unions? What advice would you give to them?
Go for it, Kristen.
So I would just say, you know, I often don't take my own advice. I'm a person just kind of jumps in and learns by doing. And this is the kind of thing where you definitely need to like do your research, see all the options, because, while these unions and PROs do generally do the same thing, there are like different nuances that might work, for whatever, your form of artistry or performance is. Um, but definitely don't delay it. I think it's something that you should definitely do before you start putting music out into the world, because you just want to make sure that if something does catch someone's attention, that you have all your ducks in a row to get paid everything you should be paid as the artist behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I'm gonna drive home the mentor point. I think it's good to just have people to bounce your ideas off that are either like a little bit ahead of you or people that you respect within the industry, just because there's nothing like that personal experience. And then also a book that I read for the first time years and years ago, All You Need to Know About the Music Business, I hope I'm getting the name right, by Donald Passman. It's very heady, but it's kind of like music industry Bible. And the best thing about it is that it's updated. It's like the 11th or 12th version right now.
Mhm.
And so when you first read it, I feel like you're just racking your brain. There's lots of things in there that are like, oh, I'm not touring, or I don't have a $6 million record deal or whatever, but like it's good to know. And my favorite part about that book is that there's an appendix where he'll go over like how the industry used to be. Because the thing about this, we're talking about royalties now, we're talking about residuals, all these things. And it's really confusing. And the reason why it's confusing is because the industry's changed so much. So you almost need to know how it used to be to know why it is what it is now. Like things like streaming didn't exist like not too long ago, right? So that's changed the industry completely. And that's where some of your royalties come from. And so that's important to know. And it's like you kind of can see like how unfair things are, or like, okay, this is how much I could potentially make as an independent artist. Maybe I'll pivot, right? To like sync or whatever it may be. So that's a good resource, just because like I'll read it and be like, all right, I don't have a sync deal right now. But then when I do get it, I can like go to that chapter in the book. And it's something that I think is very rare. Like I don't have many textbooks that I go back to after 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's worth whatever the $15 it is, and like mark it up, like we're talking about like, is it worth paying dues? Is it worth this? I'm like, this is something that's totally worth investing in, because you might only be using 6% of that book right now, but like in 5 years, you might be like, oh, I'm halfway through in terms of like what I was looking at in terms of how royalties are split out or how I'm getting paid out. So when I do sign my record deal, I know what I'm getting. And then the last thing I'll say, and I'll be quiet, is that I would like to read my contracts. I get a lawyer. Don't be trying to read everything on your own, but read your contracts yourself and come to the lawyer with questions. Don't like to say, I don't know anything about this. This is too long. I mean, most contracts aren't that long. So like read the 6 pages and like, take a break and a breath, but like, no, be like, hey, this doesn't really make sense to me. Like, what does it mean for them to use my name and likeness? Like, is that something that everybody says yes to? And then like, at least you'll go in with that, because an entertainment lawyer might not know what you're trying to, what your interests are. I've had lawyers be like, do you want this? You know what I mean? And like, I'll be like, oh, I didn't even see that in the contract, right? So like, there will come a day when you might not be like looking so intently at your contracts, but at the beginning of your career, especially, make sure you're reading so that you know what looks odd down the road. So those are my pieces of advice for people looking to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. Get your ducks in a row, says Kristen. Make sure that those things are happening. Use some resources, i.e., textbooks, any other resources that you have, and get a lawyer. Yes, all those things. If I was able to take some notes, I'd be taking notes right now for sure. Awesome. So we're shifting over to NFTs, something that I know is still really new and still really exciting, especially for artists. So we're going to jump right into it. And I hope you all have your pens and pencils ready because it's going to be a lot and it's going to be incredible. So, Kristen, how do music NFTs generate royalties?
The simple answer to that is that, music NFTs can eliminate the need for a partner in the sense of like a label, a publisher, a PRO. Like there are platforms that will allow you to put up your own music as an NFT. And, your fans or collectors can bid on it. They can also buy it and resell it, and the royalty piece comes into play every time it's resold to someone else, just based on the demand or interest in your work. You get a royalty from that. Most platforms will allow you to set it at between 5 and 10%, but that basically exists in perpetuity as long as the blockchain exists, which I don't think it's going anywhere. So it's a direct way to get royalties without waiting for a check that could come quarterly or biannually. It's like a direct way to get money for things that you need, for studio time, for your rent, and it's kind of something that you can do yourself. So that's what's so exciting about it. It is very new, so there things are changing every day, laws are being made, tools are being invented, but at the core of it, it's a way for artists and their fans and collectors to directly connect and support each other.
Love that. All about that direct connection, realizing like what bits are necessary and what bits are like, no, this is just gonna be you and me. We got this. Um,
Exactly.
love it. So, for someone who doesn't know really anything about this world, what is an NFT?
So NFT, it stands for non-fungible token. Um, Fungible, I really don't like that word, but that's what we're stuck with. So that word in itself, it means like something can be exchanged for another thing. Like $1 equals $1, 1 peso equals 1 peso, 1 Bitcoin for 1 Bitcoin. But when you throw in the non-fungible aspect, there's something about it that has a unique digital signature. There's nothing else like exactly like it. And the ways that the tokens are different can change. Sometimes it's a different trait, sometimes it's a different number, sometimes it's a different visual, but it all boils down to that is a unique thing that you own on the blockchain. And even to talk about blockchains, it's like a public database that can't be changed. So when we talk about like Ethereum and purchasing NFTs on the blockchain, like there's a record of all of that anyone can see. Um, and so there's that transparency. There's not, all these different entities to go through who may or may not take their cut. It's transparent, and it can be almost anything. It can be a picture, it can be a sound, it can be a song. Like the possibilities are like really endless right
Awesome. I love that. And everybody, we can take a collective deep breath as we get into these different terminologies, jot them down. We can digest them later together because I'm right there with you. Um, so you kind of like just touched on it actually, but what are some examples of NFTs that artists can create? Like, I know some artists are like, I don't get how it translates and moves over. Like, how does my artistry show up, in an NFT form?
now. It's pretty open-ended right now. Like you can have an NFT that is a painting you painted, a photo you took, a digital rendering of an apple or a duck or an ape or any of these things. So what you can make an NFT is it's really totally up to you. Some NFTs are like a membership card for certain groups and communities. So the possibilities are really endless, but I get really excited about music NFTs because they have the ability to provide somewhat of like direct compensation for artists and direct royalties in like real time, versus some of the methods we currently use.
Love that. Awesome. So, what are some examples of some NFTs that you've seen like artists create, like who are actually successful in this music NFT world?
So it's still very early. So there's like Snoop Dogg. He's very involved in the space. He actually has um, NFTs that are PFPs. They're like doggies. So that's like one art piece of it. But he also just dropped a music NFT a few days ago, and it was like a death row mixtape. So he's done that bit of it. Nas has also dropped an NFT. He did his on Royal. And Royal is really cool because it allows you as the buyer to kind of participate in the streaming royalties of the song. Because even if you drop something as an NFT, it can still exist in, on Spotify and Apple Music, on DSPs. So as a part of that NFT, I think he gave a 50% of the royalties that will be like dispersed among the buyers. Um, there is this collective called Selection that I love. They've been around since like 2011, doing like radio shows on SoundCloud and Apple Music, and have just really been like the baseboard for a lot of dope artists. And they recently did an NFT that was based on a radio show that they did, and the radio show had like 18 different artists, and there's actually like a program that will allow you to make a smart contract, which is what NFTs are based off of, which is just a bunch of code. I'm not like a tech. I'm not a techie. It's not necessary, but I understand like the basis. So every NFT has a smart contract that it's based off of. And when you drop an NFT, if you have two collaborators, 5, 18, you can set it up in such a way where like everyone gets their percentage. So Selection dropped this NFT and they raised about like 33 ETH for the 18 contributors to the project, which I believe at the time was maybe 80 something ish $1,000.
Wow.
And it's all there on the blockchain. You can see the percentage that everyone's getting. And it's a way for fans to directly support the artists they love. You have artists like Kimbra. She did an NFT on Collection, and Collection is cool because it kind of bridges the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. And when I say that, Web 2 is like the internet we use now, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, all that. And Web 3 is more so where the blockchain lives, which is a little more complicated and kind of, may cause some people to be hesitant. But their website actually allows you to use like credit cards and debit cards to purchase NFTs. Like you don't even have to get into the crypto aspect of it. So there's just a lot of different options. I think Doja Cat dropped like a one-of-one NFT that went for like 188K. And in addition to owning like the digital collectible, yes, a lot of money.
We like, right, listen.
You also get like a VIP experience to one of her shows and concerts. So you can really attach anything to it, like any sort of value that you feel like your fans may want. So like the lane is wide open in that way.
That sounds incredible. I feel like I need like a completely separate masterclass on all of this multiple times.
Well, it's hard to kind of, I really just wanted to let people know that this was an option, but there's so many layers to it, so many different ways you can do it, that this is not all encompassing. But it's definitely like, I just hope that more people get interested and start looking into the different ways that they can like use NFTs to help themselves, because not, you don't have to be a platinum Grammy award winning artist to use NFTs and like use it to help, boost your artistry and your craft.
I love that. And like you were saying, we've been talking about pretty big artists. So what is the typical cost of creating an NFT?
It varies. There is this platform called Mint Songs, where it's actually a $0 minting fee. They'll actually like give you the currency you need to make it happen. On the flip side of that, sometimes there are like gas fees involved. So I look at gas, it's kind of like a transaction fee, kind of similar to the gas prices that we deal with today. Like sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down, but like no matter what, you need gas to basically get it done. But in my research, I found that like gas fees are usually less than $100 to mint an NFT. So it's like, it's low cost, and there are even, like Mint Songs, like totally no cost options available.
Awesome. So all right, so you've got So you've got this idea, you've got this concept of almost like it kind of reminds me of like when you're, and this is a completely like non-related thing, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but you have like when you're on like Patreon, or if you have a not a GoFundMe, but like a Kickstarter, where you're like creating these like packages that you can offer literally anything you want to offer, and a person can buy that thing and then get whatever you're offering. Is that like an extremely, extremely simplified way of sort of relating the two?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. Like, Patreon is definitely a way for artists to have a direct connection with their fans, give them access to exclusive content, and like it doesn't involve Web3 and crypto and all these totally new terms. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Like, it's kind of, yeah, a simplified version of it.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to do this, folks. Listen, we all going to be dropping NFTs, all thanks to Kristen. Um, so you were saying Web3, Web2, how much like coding knowledge, background in tech do you need to have in order to, start this process or like drop your first NFT?
To be honest, you don't need a lot of coding and tech knowledge. I will say that you definitely need to do your own research about the platform that you're using, but so many platforms kind of take care of that for the artist, where you can just upload the visual and the audio, and they take it from there. I think that if you definitely need a platform to do that. Like, if you just had the idea that I want to do this completely on my own with no help, then yes, you need to know how to build a website, how to integrate a smart contract into that. Like, that gets more complicated. But there are so many platforms currently in existence and still being built every day that try to make that process as easy as possible for the artist, and just kind of like let them be creative, and then they handle things on the back end.
Awesome. And that kind of like funnels right into the next question that I have. You kind of touched on one of the benefits being that you don't have to know code to do this on these platforms, but group marketplaces like Royal and Collection, what are the benefits of doing it through those entities versus like, trying to do it on your own?
The biggest thing is just the support and the onboarding knowledge, because if you use those platforms, like, they'll make sure that you have like the tools you need to succeed. Some platforms are open, which means that anyone can upload their work, and have it, be up for sale or for auction. And some are more curated, like Sound.xyz. I think it's really cool that they, brought some artists into the fold and had them release NFTs, and then allowed those artists to bring other artists in. So
Mhm.
it's still kind of like building that community, and who and kind of the idea of each one teach one. Which is, I think, is so necessary in this new like space and landscape. But I definitely think that, you know, early on, as we figure this out, the platforms are definitely necessary, to make sure that, like, you're safe, your bases are covered. I wouldn't even know how to do this on my own. Like, I would definitely definitely want to partner with the platform.
Awesome. That sounds great. I'm also going to send, this was like a quick, drop of these things, but I'll send the links as well. I know everyone's looking to figure out what these actual platforms are. So, yes, I will drop those again with the links, but we want to get through all this information first. And also in the follow-up email, we'll send these resources as well. So even if you can't copy and paste from the chat, or the links aren't showing up for you, we will have the links in the follow-up email along with the video recording of this in session. So don't worry, we've got you covered. We're going to make sure you guys get all of the resources that Jen and Kristen have provided. Awesome. So you're ready to launch this NFT. What do you have to have in place? Like, okay, so you sign up for your marketplace that you want to be a part of. What do you need to kind of have in place before the official launch?
The biggest thing to have in place is your wallet. Your wallet, there are a few different types of wallets: MetaMask, Coinbase, Rainbow. different types of wallets, but basically that's where you store your crypto, and that's where you'll pay any gas fees that you'll need to pay. It'll come out of there. And also for your royalties or any money that you make, they'll need your wallet address because that will be where your money comes into. Um, so yeah, so definitely just have a wallet. I think that is the only thing that you truly, truly need to get started. But of course, having your website, having things easily accessible for people to find out things about you, but definitely your wallet first and foremost.
Awesome. And is the main source of like how people know that you have an NFT like through your own fan base, or is there some way that like maybe through the marketplaces that you join that people just happen upon your NFTs?
I think that people just happen upon them in marketplaces. And I think that so much of NFTs live on Twitter. Like Twitter
Right.
is the main source of information. Like even myself, like a lot of people, when they first want to learn more about NFTs, they'll make a different Twitter account where they just follow people in the space to learn more. It's like their NFT Twitter. Like it's so many things happen so quickly in the space that it's a great place to like have dialogue and talk about things. Whereas like, Instagram is kind of more aesthetically based. I think Twitter is the place to have conversations. And when you have something that is like this new and this developing, it's important to still have that dialogue as we all figure it out.
Yes, love that interactive space, sharing that knowledge, dropping those NFTs. I probably like used the wrong terminology when I was like launching. You say drop, so we're gonna say drop because you're the pro.
I think either one works, launch, drop. I think, you know, in the NFT space, everything isn't perfect. So there's also kind of this hype mentality. So I think that people took the term drop from like Supreme and things like that to kind of give this air of exclusivity, but any term is fine.
Yeah,
Either
it's definitely cooler,
yeah.
more excitement around the word drop. So that's what we're gonna go with. All right, guys, we have one more question before we jump into the Q&A. So again, if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So just like with royalties, what advice would you give to an independent artist that is interested in diving into the world of NFTs?
Um, to start off, definitely, there's an acronym you will see a lot, DYOR, do your own research, just because there are a lot of people in this space giving their opinions, and you just need to know how to do what's best for you. I would also say that as an artist, if you do want to put out your work as an NFT, make sure that like you have all the rights to it, that you have the permission from anyone else that was involved. Like if you're a songwriter and there's a producer, it's important to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page and we can all kind of benefit from it. um the copyright laws in the space are kind of a bit in flux, but I do think that eventually, there will come a time where you can't just like post something that doesn't belong to you and say that it's an NFT. I think it's important to like be honest and transparent and make sure that everyone is compensated for what they contributed to your project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been a world of incredible new information that is definitely necessary.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and I'll be the first to admit that. But I like to just talk about it to get people thinking about it, so they know that like it's an option, it's an avenue, just something to look into is another source of income.
Yes, I love that. We had a question come through the chat actually that asks, what is the greenest way to mint a music NFT? And are there any, or what are your environmental concerns?
The environmental concerns piece is real and legit. I kind of look at it like almost like cars and using gas. Gas is not good for the environment. As time goes on, we're using electric cars, we're finding ways to cut out on gas. And so I think that the same kind of applies to NFTs. Like it may not be perfect right now, but there are other blockchains popping up that have less of an environmental impact. I mentioned selection before. And the NFT they dropped on the Ethereum blockchain, which, provided, royalties and compensation for everyone involved. But they also dropped an NFT on the Polygon network, which is a different blockchain and has less of an environmental footprint. It's cheaper to mint. It's basically better just all around. But I think it's taking time for that to catch on and go mainstream. So I definitely think that it's something that artists in the space are aware of, and we're just kind of trying to minimize it where we can and just kind of take learnings and go from there. But it's definitely still a work in progress, in my
Mm, and do you find that like the popularity of certain networks is based on who has minted NFTs on that network, or is it mainly just, how much buzz, which I guess is kind of correlated around those things?
Yeah, there are definitely like more popular networks. I feel like Ethereum and Polygon are some of the main two, but there's also Solana. There's so many more that, I don't even know all of the ins and outs of, but definitely Ethereum's having a moment. It's kind of the main blockchain of NFTs. So I think that, as time goes on, it'll still be a major player, but other options will pop up, for, the more environmentally green conscious, way of moving forward.
Amazing. DYOR, like on everything. We did have a question come through for Jen. They said, you've covered songwriting, publishing royalties, plus the NFTs, but what about broadcasting royalties? As digital broadcasting in the US, like Pandora and Sirius, qualify, they hope you're benefiting, Jen. And in the UK, Europe, South America, Canada, and Japan, broadcasting royalties benefit not only the label and the artist, but the session players and singers. So, do you have any insight on broadcasting royalties, I guess, as far as the US is concerned, for artists as well as session musicians?
I have not made a significant amount of money enough to speak to that, which is why I've pivoted towards things like sync. I think it's, in my anecdotally, I think it's similar to streaming monies, where you're not really seeing much. It takes a lot to get a little.
Mhm.
So that's I think, and that all funnels into registering. So like whatever money that you're making, if something does pop off, it's all going to you. So I think that the lesson there is just to make sure that your songs are registered through your PRO, to make sure that if money comes through that, and if something is placed on Euphoria, or whatever, then you're getting, and then people are like Shazamming it, and then like they add it, they want to make a Pandora station based off of your song, that you're getting all that money that you wouldn't necessarily have seen a large amount. Like, CD Baby might send you like $40, and then all of a sudden the next year you get like $6,000. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're registered, because it's hard to backtrack that. So I think that just comes down to like, make sure that your ducks are in a row in terms of registration, before anything takes off.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Um, I had another question come through the chat. Um, why does it feel like the more you have a marketing strategy for your NFT drops, the better it is? Is it still viable for artists who don't have that kind of budget? So, like, yeah, if an artist doesn't have a huge following or huge marketing budget, how can their NFT, or yeah, can their NFT, still be successful?
Um, I think so. I think that there's a sliding scale of success. I think that if you're at the point where you're just starting out and you don't have a marketing budget or much of a budget at all, but you still have the ability to put your work on a site like Mint Songs or Zora, these platforms are building their own communities, people who believe in this so much that they just want to collect art that they like, whether they've heard of you before or not. So I don't think that as far as NFTs go, you should let the budget piece of it hold you back, because so much of Web3 is about being decentralized and just kind of making your own rules and doing what you want to do. So while, it may not be a fast track to thousands and thousands of dollars, like even just getting on the platform, that will give you exposure to people who literally just stay on the platform to support artists that they like. So yeah, so definitely don't let that hold you back if you don't have a plan or if you're still figuring it out. Like you can still go for it.
Awesome. Love that. Yes, get that motivation. Just do it. And it also seems like it's a great space for artists to like diversify a little bit. Like I
Mhm.
know a lot of times like your Instagram kind of, the way you show up on Instagram or the way you show up on your website, NFTs seem like a whole new world where like if you always wanted to dabble in, digital art or if you always wanted to dabble
Yeah,
in, some other thing, it allows for that space without like, pigeonholing because people are discovering
exactly.
you for the first time.
It's a great place to try things out. And I feel like in the world of Instagram and Spotify and all that, you do kind of generally have an ideal or an image or a sound that you kind of have to live up to. But in Web3, it's kind of just a free for all. Like try stuff out, see if it works, see if it doesn't work, and if it does, go for it. If it doesn't, pivot. There's no algorithm holding you to anything.
Love that. I mean, the way you just talked about it, it just sounds like pivot. Like, just yes, thank you. Yes and yes. There was another question in the chat that asks, is there any benefit to register with a PRO as a publisher rather than as a songwriter? Jen, you want to speak to that? And Kristen, if you want to speak to that as well.
Um, do both. Yeah. I signed up a very long time ago, but it's super easy on all of these platforms to just create your publishing company on the spot, and then that money can funnel towards your royalties once you register songs. And so what I've seen is you should be signing split sheets when you write with people, so
Mhm.
that you know who owns what piece of the song. And so once that's all settled, I like to have like a paper copy and then also email that out. I put in a Dropbox, everything's timestamped, all that good stuff, right? That we do when we write. And then you can kind of decide how that is. Like I have certain producers that I work with where we're like, hey, everything's down the middle. If there's three of us, 33, 33, 30, you know what I mean? Some people that you're working with for the first time, you might have to say, like, hey, like what do you usually do, and like negotiate. Once that's all settled, like that's what you're going to input onto the platform. CSAC, BMI, ASCAP, they all have websites where you register your songs, and that's a part of the information you put in there. You put in like I think an MP3 on there, so that funnels into other things that might make you money down the road, and then you put in splits. So don't limit yourself. I don't think there's a reason to not sign up for a publishing at that moment if you haven't already done it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything you want to add, Kristen?
No, I piggyback off all that, and just if you don't, have a publishing deal, make sure that you yourself are starting the publishing entity so you still can collect those royalties as well.
Awesome. We had another question come through. We're like rolling through these questions, so I appreciate you guys answering them all, and I appreciate you guys asking as well. There is a question that asks, is there any platform that focuses only on music NFTs? Like, can someone buy a song from you that's exclusive for the buyer, or is there always a combination of a digital image and then you add music to it?
There are platforms that will like allow you to sell your work as like a one of one, to just like completely buy a song, or bid on a song. So there's both. I think Catalog lets you do one of ones. There's another site called One of, um, Sound Mint, like all of Sound Mint, Sound. They're all like exclusively music NFTs. They're just different ways to drop them. Sometimes, producers drop stems to attract mixed and paired with like an audio visual element. So yeah, so I've found that like throughout all the different platforms, you can kind of find what works best for you, whether it's a one of one, whether it's releasing a song with like 30 editions that are each numbered differently. Um, there's basically something for everyone because we're just kind of figuring out what works at this point.
Yes, and yes. Well, yes, one of ones. We had another question, and this will probably be the last question we can get to before the hour is up. Um, I guess how does it work when you want to release a song as an NFT, but also on like a streaming platform or through TuneCore for? the masses, I guess.
So Web3 right now, I look at it like an additional source of income. Like whatever you do as an NFT or with Web3 or on the blockchain doesn't interfere with Web2, with you releasing it on Apple or Spotify and going through all the normal channels. Like, and I definitely recommend at this point still doing both. Music NFTs are so new that I don't think that they can totally replace the income that you get from PROs and labels and publishing, but it's an option that might cut the middleman out a bit, but you still do need the middleman because they have the global reach.
Mhm.
Hopefully in a few years that won't be the case, but definitely right now I encourage people to explore avenues of releasing on Web2 and Web3.
Awesome. There you go. Plain and simple. Do it all
Mhm.
because
Do it all
you can.
because we can.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. This has been absolutely incredible. I mean, people are in the chat like, I've learned so much. This has been so great. And again, like we've been saying, do your own research. This is just the beginning. So much to learn about all of these topics. But thank you so much, Jen, for your insight. Thank you, Kristen, for your insight. This has been so wonderful. Thanks to all of you guys in the chat, all of your questions. Yes, we will drop Instagram handles. I got you guys. Listen, I got you covered. I will do that for sure right now. If you guys want to say anything to the crowd before we wrap up.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I feel really, above all else, I feel like I'm an artist advocate and I just want to let as many artists know as possible that this is an option. This is something to look into. This can be beneficial to you. So thank you for having me and letting me ramble.
No, this was wonderful. No ramble.
No, I thank you for letting me. I learned a lot here on the other side of the panel. So thank you for having me as well. And it's just great to be a part of this panel. Thanks.
Awesome. This has been incredible. Again, you guys, this is Sofar in session. I am Kristen, aka Like Water. We have our next in session on the 14th of April, all about sync. Also, feel free to jump over to our YouTube channel. There are so many in sessions about so many topics that kind of just dibble and dabble and talk a lot about what we were talking about today. So just go ahead and explore those things. I'm going to drop all the links in the chat. And again, we're going to follow up with an email with this video just for you guys and with all of the links to resources and all of the topics that we covered here. So thank you guys so much for being here. And this has been In Session.